You probably know someone who was not always this critical. Maybe they used to let things go. Maybe they laughed things off. Maybe they were easier to please, easier to surprise, easier to be around without feeling quietly evaluated all the time. And then, little by little, something changed. Now, the restaurant is too loud, the service is too slow, the gift is not quite right, the plan was made badly, the weather is annoying, people are careless, nobody does things properly anymore. From the outside, it can look like they just became negative, but that is usually not the full story. Because what often changes with age is not just mood, it is tolerance. A lot of people become more critical when their margin gets smaller. They have less patience for noise, less energy for unpredictability, less room inside themselves to absorb one more inconvenience without reacting to it. So the reaction gets sharper, not always because the problem is bigger, but because their buffer is smaller. That is one of the parts younger people often miss. They hear the complaint, but they do not see the accumulation behind it. The bad sleep, the physical discomfort, the repeated disappointments, the quiet grief of things getting harder, slower, more painful, more unfamiliar. By the time a person starts sounding hard to please, they may already feel like life itself has become harder to negotiate, and criticism can become a way of pushing back against that. Sometimes it's about control. When more parts of life start feeling unstable, inconvenient, or out of reach, people often become stricter about the parts they can still judge. The table should be set a certain way. The call should happen on time. The instructions should be followed. The shirt should be folded properly. Tiny standards start carrying more emotional weight than they used to because they are no longer just standards. They are a way to keep the world from feeling sloppy, fast, and impossible to hold. Sometimes it's not even anger, it's overstimulation. A person who complains about noise, clutter, delay, bad service, or changed plans may not be trying to dominate the room. They may be reacting to a nervous system that has become less forgiving. Things that used to feel minor now land harder. The threshold changes. The outside world stays noisy, but the inside world becomes less able to filter it out. And then there's disappointment. The longer people live, the more often they have seen things fail to be what they hoped. Not just once, but repeatedly. Promises weaken. Institutions disappoint. Families become complicated. Bodies become unreliable. Friends change. Time becomes more visible. After enough of that, some people stop meeting the world with openness and start meeting it with inspection. Not because they enjoy negativity, but because expectation has become risky. Criticism can protect against letdown. If you expect less, inspect more, and point out flaws early, you create a small sense of distance between yourself and disappointment. It's a defensive style, but it doesn't always look defensive. Sometimes it just looks mean. Sometimes it looks impossible to satisfy. Sometimes it looks like the person wants to find fault in everything, when really they have just stopped trusting life to feel gentle on its own. There's also a quieter sadness inside some of this. People do not always grieve aging directly. They grieve it sideways, through irritation, through impatience, through becoming strangely intense about small inconveniences. It's easier to complain the soup is cold than to say the world feels less familiar. It's easier to complain about people being rude than to say you no longer feel at ease in the pace of modern life. So criticism can become a surface language for deeper friction. Of course, not every older person becomes more critical. Some become softer. Some become funnier. Some become more tolerant because they no longer expect perfection from anyone, including themselves. But when criticism does increase with age, it's often less about simple bitterness than people assume. It can be accumulated friction, reduced energy, more sensitivity, more pain, more disappointment, more need for order, more awareness that time is limited, which makes wasted effort feel strangely offensive. That's why some older people react so strongly to things that seem small to everyone else. The thing itself is small,
but it lands in a system already crowded with effort, memory, adjustment, and loss. From the outside, they can seem harder to be around. Inside, they may just feel less protected from life than they used to. And that doesn't excuse cruelty, but it does make the pattern more human. Because sometimes the person who complains the most is not simply becoming difficult. Sometimes they are becoming less buffered, less distracted, less willing, and less able to pretend that constant friction doesn't wear a person down.